Hello, guys. This is Amber with doubleacrimefiles. I just wanted to let you know about this little app called Anchor. It is the easiest way for you to jumpstart your podcast business. Once you do record your podcast, you upload it, and Anchor then automatically distributes it and gets it out there to Apple, Google, Spotify, and many, many more. You can make money from this podcast on here with no minimum listenership. Everything you need is right here in one place, on the app, on your phone, on your tablet, or on your computer. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. And I hope to see you be a co-host in one of our future podcasts. Thank you, guys.
Hey guys, this is Arianne from Double A. Have you ever wanted to start a podcast? Well, let me tell you about Anchor. It's actually the app that I'm using now. It's completely free. You don't even have to pay to download it on your phone or tablet. And you can also use the website, anchor.fm. There's also creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer, whichever one you feel more comfortable with. So Anchor will also distribute your podcast for you. And you're wondering, what? Yeah, it's true. You can. So it can be heard from Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many, many more. You can also make money from it. Come on, we all love that little green in our life with no minimum listenership. That means you can have one listener or two listeners and you still get paid. Come on now. And it's everything you need to make for a podcast all in one. Completely. So download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Oh, hey. Okay. Good evening, guys. This is Double A. Arianne and Amber back again. And I'm sorry I wasn't on Sunday. Kind of had a little minor accident while I was out of town. And I was kind of out of it with pain medicines. So that was completely my fault. But we are back on schedule. Thank goodness. How was your weekend, Amber?
Pretty good. Do you hear my hand?
I heard. Were they spinning on the wheel?
Yep.
Yeah, I heard the wheel.
By now, be very well attuned to all the noises of our background.
I know the drinking, like the little ball that's on the cage, like it makes this particular like sound, like it's very, how do you say it? Rhythmatic, I guess. Is that even a word?
It's squeaky. It's very squeaky.
Like it has a certain beat. There we go. It has a certain beat to it. So you can almost distinguish what if they're drinking or spinning on their wheel.
Mm-hmm.
Basically. Okay, so tonight, you guys, we are doing a female killer today. I don't think I've done it yet. I don't think I've done a female killer yet. I think all the ones that I've done are male.
Mm-hmm.
So tonight we are doing Sade Abe, and I'm sorry if I butcher it because this is Japanese. So in America you would say Sade Abe, but in Japanese you will flip flop it. So Abe Sada.
technically, because their last name is their first,
Weird,
if you
but
get what I'm saying. So it's flip flopped. So, anyways, she was born on May 28th, 1905,
okay.
and she is the seventh out of eight children. I'm not even gonna attempt her um, father's name because that I can't even. But her mother's name is Katsu. They were of a upper middle class family. They made mats, like the mats that you sit on, and they're quite popular at that time. So they made a good bit of money.
Like
Um,
what type of mat?
like the ones that like those small mats that like traditional Japanese kneel on.
Oh, okay.
So those kinds of mats. So they were in like in a small part of Tokyo called Kanda. They were in that neighborhood, but they were upper class. So only four of the Abe family, only four children survived into adulthood. So the other four actually passed away while they were either a baby or an infant.
Wow.
So only four. And Sada was actually the youngest that grew into adulthood. So, being the youngest, her mother actually doted on her a lot. So she encouraged her to take like singing and dancing lessons and almost those lessons of a geisha,
Hmm.
essentially. So if you guys don't know what a geisha is basically a high end Japanese prostitute, essentially. But and what I mean by high end is they learn music, they learn arts, they learn how to dance, they learn traditional um what is it, tea pouring, um and they wear traditional clothing, and they wear the white not powdered but white like paint mask, I guess, on their face with like really thin lips. So they're trained from really young. And um,
Really young to be a prostitute.
yeah, so I forgot what it's called. So they follow an older geisha around. Okay, so you're talking about 13 to 15-year olds. They don't go out and be a geisha just yet. What they do is they help their so-called older sister um, do their makeup, put on their um, this. It looks like, if you guys don't know what traditional Japanese dress is, so it's almost like a kimono, but on the back they're tied like this square-looking pillow. It's supposed to make you um, stand up tall and straight. So to them, it's like you're very poised and very elegant, essentially. And then you're walking on these wooden shoes that have like two really thin um, strips of plank on it. And so you have to be very, very, very careful to not fall, because like Japanese roads are not straight and paved like ours normally. So like especially in these neighborhoods, so they train from a very young age. They also learn music, dancing, again, tea pouring, how to kneel when they open up doors and serve other people. So essentially, that's what Sada was being taught. Her mother pushed her in that direction. So she had an older sister, and her older sister ended up being like uh what is it, a prostitute and working in a brothel. And so it wasn't uncommon back then for women to be promiscuous, but at the same time, it was very common for them to get punished for it, if you get what I'm saying, which doesn't make sense to me. Like, you're okay with someone being a prostitute, but like, if it's someone then they get backlash for it.
Little double standard.
But you enjoy it.
Right.
You get what I'm saying? So her older sister ended up being working at a brothel, and she had a lot of these clients. Her father ended up punishing her and basically took her out of the family, basically disowned her. And but thankfully to that family, that incident did not um, affect Sada's, I guess, how do you say it? Um, didn't affect her being married later on. Like, that reputation didn't damage her.
Mm-hmm.
Because normally back then, reputations were a huge thing. And then they were of an upper class family. So thankfully, that didn't ruin her reputation. So she was able to get married later on if she wanted to. So we'll talk about that later. But anyway, so Sada actually ended up um, going and being a prostitute herself. So but before then, at the age of 15, she was actually raped, and like, her parents supported her and defended her. Like, they weren't the type of parents that was like, oh, we don't believe you, which a lot of times back then, especially in Asian culture, they try not to get a lot of backlash, so they would rather punish their child than to get backlash from someone who actually did wrong.
Bullshit. I don't like that.
So thankfully, both of her parents, her mother and her father, like I said, her mother doted on her. She loved her. So she would do anything for her and would, you know, um, defend her. Her dad was the same way. So they both defended her and her honor.
Good.
But even in spite of that, she still became like what they called a difficult teenager. So she was still causing trouble
I mean, of course,
as she grew up.
a lot of
Okay.
because you're being shown love doesn't mean that though what was inflicted on you just disappeared. That's still PTSD. That's still trauma that she has to deal with.
Yeah. I mean, it just became so, like, hard on her parents to try to, like, calm her down, basically. So her dad just about had it and convinced her mom to sell her to a geisha house
Wow.
at the age of 15.
Wow.
So she ended up um, being sold to a geisha house, but supposedly her older sister testified saying that Sada originally wanted to be a geisha anyway, so it wasn't like a forced thing. But Sada ended up twisting that up. Well, not really twisting it, but saying the opposite, saying, no, I didn't want to be a geisha. I was just pushed to be one, and I was sold as one. So at 15, she ended up um, going to a geisha house, and she said, quote unquote, that the geisha world proves to be frustrating and disappointing. Yeah. So to become a true geisha and to move up, like I said, you have to do basically an internship almost. You have to follow an older sister around. You have to make sure that she's dressed. You see how she acts, and then you have classes. Then you have like all these lessons to do, and that's how you become like one of the top stars. And you're talking about these geisha houses that provide all this stuff. So, like the mistress or the head lady of the house, she would essentially force you to work once you are able to work on your own. You have to work out your debt because technically you created a debt with her by taking these lessons.
Hmm.
She's providing you a place to stay, providing you all these like nice lessons and all these nice clients. So you have to pay her back. So these people, these young ladies from the age of 18 on up would be working for close to 10 years just to pay off a debt.
Wow.
So that's what I mean by a high end prostitute. These it's it's absolutely nuts. If you guys want to learn more about geishas, like I'll be more than happy to look them up for you, and we could talk about it on Sunday if you guys want to, or spread it out, or you guys can look at it for yourself. There's a lot of videos on YouTube. Anyways, so she spent most of her childhood from 15 to 18, 18 and 19 actually, studying art and music. And even then, she ended up being like a low ranking geisha. So the low ranking geishas don't, one, don't get paid enough, and two, they're more of the sex kind. Like they're more opted to give sex. High end geishas, they get paid more just for attending get togethers
So that
and serving drinks, not providing their body.
that should be that the game is backwards on that. I feel like if you have
Exactly.
a lot of work, you should get paid more.
Exactly. So she ended up being a low ranking geisha and she worked for 5 years and then eventually contracted an STD,
Yep.
of course.
Yep.
Which meant at that time she would have to go do regular examinations. And back then in Japan, it was legal to have to be a prostitute, but you had to have a license for it.
Really.
Yeah. So she decided she didn't like that because to get the legal license, you had to go through examinations, make sure that that you don't carry any kinds of diseases.
Mhm.
And she didn't want to do that anymore. So she wanted to enter a quote unquote better, higher paying profession, which is still a prostitute, but she wanted she wanted higher end clients. So she ended up working in Osaka, and Osaka is like a mini Tokyo. It's one of those really, really big tourist destinations. And so after she moved to Osaka, she began to work at Tobita Brothel. And then she gained a reputation of being a troublemaker. So she stole money from clients and then attempted to leave the brothel like several times and then was tracked down by legal the legal prostitution system.
Wow.
They had that back then in Japan, which is crazy. So after 2 years, she ended up succeeding in escaping the licensed prostitution system and began working as a waitress. And then after that, she was not happy with like how much money she was making because you got to figure in the 1900s or by this time it was like 1930 early 1930s. So you're talking about really really low paying
Mhm.
jobs. And as a waitress, you're not making more than $1 a day at that point. So she decided that she didn't like that she was not getting enough money. So she ended up working as a prostitute again, but this time unlicensed.
Hmm.
So she was doing it illegally. technically. So there are some unlicensed brothels in Osaka, and she started working in one of them in 1932. And then in 1933, she found out that her mother had died. And so she had went back to Tokyo to visit her father and then to visit her mother's grave. Then she ended up entering the prostitution market in Tokyo and became a mistress for the very first time to this older gentleman. And then her father became ill in 1934. 10 days later, after, I think it said, let's see here. Yeah, so January 1934, he became ill, and then Sada had stopped being a prostitute for 10 days to nurse him, and then he died.
Dang.
Yeah. So in October of 1934, Sada was actually arrested in a police raid on one of the brothels, and it just happened to be the brothel that she was working at. So a friend a friend of the brothel owner actually had like enough money to get all the women released. So he released them. His name was Kinosuke Kasahara. Man, these are names that are hard to pronounce. Um, so he ended up being attracted to Sada after um, he went over to the jail and paid like all the debts to this woman. And he ended up looking at Sada and then thinking that she was really pretty, ended up liking her, and then finding out that she had no debts and, basically no ties to the brothel. He didn't have to pay for anything. So he basically gave her an option to be his mistress.
Mm.
Yeah. And she ended up agreeing,
Wow.
of course.
Mhm.
So Kasahara, bought a house for Sada on December of 1934 and gave her basically like an allowance money. So what he said to the police was, quote, she was really strong, a real powerful one. Even though I am pretty jaded, she was enough to astound me. She wasn't satisfied unless we did it 2, 3, or 4 times a night. To her, it was unacceptable unless I had my hand on her private parts all night long. At first, it was great, but after a couple of weeks, I got a little exhausted. End quote. So she was a very sexual person, but I mean, of course, she was sold to a geisha house at the age of 15. So yeah. So when Sada suggested to Kasahara to leave his wife and to marry her, of course he refused. There's not a lot of men that will end up leaving their wives for their mistress. So of course he refused. And so she then was like, okay, well, if you don't want to divorce her or leave her and marry me, then can I take in another lover?
Why does she have to?
Hmm?
Why does she have to ask permission?
Because to her, it was a relationship
Mm.
between her and Kasahara because he was providing her with housing, with food, with money, essentially all that she needed and wanted. So she thought it was a relationship.
Ooh.
So of course, Kasahara was like, "No, you're not gonna take in another lover because I brought you in. You're gonna be mine and mine only. But I'm not gonna leave my wife for you."
That's some bullshit.
So he wanted to have his cake and eat it too.
Yeah, I mean, most men do that. Like,
So she, of course, ended the relationship and escaped um, escaped him and left for Nagoya, Japan. And so Kasahara to the police, was telling them how their relationship ended and said, quote, "She is a slut and a whore, and as what she has done makes clear, she is a woman whom men should fear." End quote.
Well,
And then she said he didn't love me and treated me like an animal. He was the kind of scum who would then plead with me when I said we should break up. That was her saying. So it's back and forth. So while she was in Nagoya, this is now 1935. While she was in Nagoya, she was wanting to leave the prostitution life, and she ended up working as a maid at a restaurant. Then she became romantically involved with a customer named Goro Omaya, who was a banker. And so they ended up, you know, having sex. And then she got bored. So she dumped him super quick and returned back to Tokyo. And Amaya, the customer, ended up missing her and then met her back in Tokyo. And so he found out that she contracted another STD
mm-mm-mm.
and offered to let her stay in a resort in Kusatsu from November of 1935 to January of 1936. And then in the meantime, Omaya suggested that Sada could be financially independent by opening up like a restaurant. And then, but she would have to work as an apprentice so that way she could learn like the ins and outs before she opens up a business. And so she was like, well, maybe that could be like my way out of the prostitution. So she took that offer. So she ended up working at an apprentice at Yoshidaya on February 1st of 1936. And so the owner of the establishment is name is oh, I'm just gonna say the last name Ishida, because the first name that's just not gonna happen right there. Kishizo Ishida. Yeah. So I'm just gonna say Ishida. So that's the owner, and at the time he was 42 and had worked his way from apprenticeship to business owner. So he runs this eel restaurant and basically has Sada being an apprentice to him. And so he thought, well, I did that. I'm going to help this person out, you know, get to where they need to be
Mm-hmm.
because he seen something in Sada. So, he was like, why not? So when she joined the restaurant, she heard whispers basically saying that Ishida was a womanizer and who did very little for the restaurant. And the restaurant was mostly managed by his wife.
Mm.
So, not long after she began work there, she, Ishida, ended up making like flirting with Sade. And Omaya, the other guy that came to Tokyo because he missed her, ended up saying that Sada was never satisfied. Yeah, so she was he was like, okay, well then you can try to give her a try. Basically to Ishida. Was like, here you go. I'm passing her to you. Because she's never satisfied. So here. Like passing a baton.
Yeah.
So then Ishida ended up meeting or arranging a pre-arranged sexual encounter at a tea house. I mean, I guess that's foreplay. A pre-arranged sexual encounter. Like I guess that's foreplay. I don't know. So a tea house back then is what Asians call a love hotel. So a hotel that's essentially for sex. They're you pay them like hourly rather than nightly, and they're really cheap. So on April 23rd, 1936 is when they met at the tea house, and they were planning on having a short fling and ended up staying in bed for 4 days.
Well,
And then on the night of April 27th, they moved to another love hotel in a distant neighborhood. And so that way no one can see who they were, and continued to drink and have sex. And then they even went as far as ordering a geisha to sing in their room while they had sex. So anyway, so they ended up having a so-called quote unquote marathon lovemaking, end quote, in in that neighborhood. And Ishida would not like return to the restaurant, and so they tried to keep their their what is it, their relationship in in secret. There we go. I don't know. I'm like in lost for words at the moment. But anyways, so they try to keep it in secret. So on May 9th, 1936, she attended a play um, in which a geisha attacks her lover with a large knife. Yeah. So after seeing this, Sada decided to threaten Ishida with a knife on their neck, like the next time they seen each other. And then on May 11th, 1936, she pawned some of her clothing and used the money to buy a, a sushi and kitchen knife,
well,
like those little tiny knives, and then a big knife. And so she later said that when she met Ishida that night, she pulled the knife out. She said, quote, I pulled the knife out of my bag and threatened him as I had, wait, I pulled the knife out of my bag, threatened him as I had done in the play I had seen, saying, Kichi, you wore that kimono just to please one of your favorite customers. You bastard, I'll kill you for that. And then Ishida was startled and drew away a little, but she seemed delighted with it all. End quote. He seemed delighted. End quote. So basically, he was happy for the role play. Like he was shocked at first, but then I think it dawned on him that it was a role play.
mm,
So he was like, okay, I'm down with it. I mean, yeah, a role play where you get a knife out and stab your lover is hot, I guess. So they ended up going um, back into the hotel room and remained there until he died.
well,
So during while they were having sex, he, was doing his thing, and Sada put the knife to the base of his penis, and said she would make sure he would never play around with another woman. And so Ishida laughed at it because he was just like, oh, she's just role playing again. So like I guess he liked that. So then he told Sada to choke him
Oh Lord.
while while she was on top of him.
So we know where this is going.
So that yeah. That was that was
That was it.
it was fun to read. I have no words. So then on the night of May 16th, she used um her kitchen knife to cut off um to I guess this is word oddly. So she used her kitchen knife, like the blade that's not sharp, not the one that you cut with,
But
right? The other side.
the handle.
Yeah. Well, not the handle, but like
Oh,
the back end of the knife that people normally use to like tenderize meat. Like not the sharp end, but literally the opposite end.
yeah.
Okay. So she used that and put it back on the base of his throat um, to cut off his breathing during an orgasm.
Well,
I don't know how that happened or how that's possible, but apparently they both really enjoyed it. So this went on for about 2 hours.
okay.
And then Sada stopped, the strangulation because according to her, Ishida's face started become distorted and it would not return to its normal appearance.
I mean, if you've been 2 hours strangling this dude, of course it's not going to look the same.
Yeah. And so um he ended up taking 30 tablets of a sedative to soothe his pain. And then according to Sada, we don't know like back then they didn't really do autopsies like that and they didn't know like the contents of his stomach. So we don't know if he actually took 30 tablets or we can't take what she says um
Yeah.
like for truth really because mind you she just is fixing to kill this guy. So ended up Ishida started to like sleep or was falling asleep. And so he looked at her and he said, "You'll put that cord around my neck and squeeze it again while I'm sleeping, won't you? If you start to strangle me, don't stop because it's so painful afterward." End quote.
Well, damn.
So Sada um, told the police that, she wondered if he was joking or if he really just wanted her to kill him. So after a while, um, she was like, okay, well, he must have been joking. But then, I guess around 2 a.m. in the morning, she had a little like thought that, okay, maybe he really did want me to kill him. So while Ishida was asleep, she wrapped her sash around the sash that she had around her kimono twice around his neck and then strangled him to death. And then she later told police, this is her quote, after I had killed him, Ish- after I had killed Ishida, I felt totally at ease, as though a heavy burden had been lifted from my shoulders, and I felt a sense of clarity.
What?
Now, this is like the English version of like the Japanese saying. But yeah, so she felt like there was a release of stress off of her shoulders. So I don't know. So she laid with his dead body for a few hours
Weird.
and then she got up, got her knife, and cut off his penis.
For what?
You'll I will tell you her quote on that in a minute. But So she wrapped it up in a magazine cover and kept it in her purse
Right.
until she was arrested 3 days later.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. So on um Sada's left thigh with blood, she wrote Sada Kichi, um, which basically is it Sada Kichi Futurari, which basically means Sada and Kichi together. And Kichi is the character of the play that she had watched of the geisha killing the guy. Kichi was the guy, essentially. So yeah, Ishida was her Kichi. And then on the bed sheet, she carved her name. Oh no, not on the bed sheet. I'm sorry. She carved her name onto his left arm. There we go. And then put his underwear um, in her purse as well. And then she left the inn and then told the staff not to disturb Ishida. And then when she was asked by police why she had only severed his genitalia, she said, quote, because I couldn't take his head or body with me, I wanted to take the part of him that brought back to me the most vivid memories,
Mm-mm.
end quote.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. So after leaving the murder scene, she went and met with Omaya, the guy that just like pushed her to Ishida,
Yeah.
and then apologized to him, um, unaware of what just had happened, and assumed that she was just apologizing for taking in another lover, and but he didn't realize that what she did actually did damage to his political career because he was associated with Ashita.
Mm. Wow.
So yeah, and so his career was completely ruined. And then so they basically was asking after she got arrested, they were trying to figure out, like why did you do it? Why did you just take his penis and yeah, it was not nice. So she said, in quote, I loved him so much I wanted him all to myself. But since we were not husband and wife, as long as he lived, he could be embraced by other women. I knew that if I killed him, no other woman would ever touch him again. So I killed him.
But that's like a complete different thing that she said. That's basically she's putting herself under the bus.
Yeah. So in her eyes, okay, so in her eyes, we know that Ishida, because when she started working at his restaurant as an apprenticeship, she had these whispers basically that he was a womanizer. And mind you, he already had a wife who was running the restaurant while he went out and flirting with these other women. So in her eyes, she didn't want to be the other woman anymore. She wanted to be the main one. So if she can't have him, nobody else can.
Mm-mm.
So killing him is just not enough. She wanted to take a piece of him that quote unquote left, gave her vivid memories.
But at the beginning, she said that when they were doing the role play thing, that of course she had been choking him for 2 hours, and then he said basically she took it as he said, "Kill me." So
Yeah.
and now she's saying that she did it for a different reason. So she's thought many different.
She's saying that she cut his penis for a different reason. She choked him out because she woke up thinking, okay, maybe he wasn't kidding about killing him by choking him. So she choked him first by her sash, with her sash, and then she just decided, okay, well, no one's gonna have his penis. I'm gonna have it.
I mean, he's dead. Nobody's gonna have it.
Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense to me.
I, I don't know. So nobody really like understood because it still didn't make sense as the reason why. Like he didn't upset her, and I guess it's because like again she didn't want to be the other woman. So yeah. So November 25th, 1936, that was her first day of trial, and there was a lot of people that was gathered there. And then on December 21st, 1936, she was convicted of second degree mutilation of a corpse. So, yeah. The prosecution demanded 10 years, but Sada decided that she would rather have death.
Well, okay.
And then so she ended up dying. Um, they didn't give her the death penalty. She was actually sentenced to 6 years in prison.
6 years.
Yeah, yeah. So she ended up like dying uh and after 1970. There's actually like really no definite date that I could find, but sometime after 1970, because she ended up being released from prison, and she changed her name.
She said,
Yeah, so there was actually like no real like we don't know what her name what she changed it to, but they presume she died sometime after 1970. I mean, I don't know what like when I was looking her up, I was just in awe because it's like you strangled your lover and then decided, oh, I'm gonna cut a vital piece of him off, and I'm gonna keep it in my bag and carry it around with me.
I mean, it doesn't make sense that she's a killer. Like, why? None of that makes any sense. The only thing that I can see contributing to her turning into a murderer is that, she experienced such tragedy at a young age. She just been very over sexualized as a child. Um, that does a lot of things to your brain when you're not allowed to be a child, but you've being molested, raped, whatever, and then you're groomed to be a prostitute. Like you don't have a chance to fully embrace childhood, and you have to grow up at a young age. Like all that, I can see it'll create some kind of turmoil and mess with her psyche. But as far as actually being a full fledged murderer, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense at all that she chose.
You gotta understand, she's never had a relationship really. All the so quote unquote relationships that she had were married men that refused to leave their wife. So basically, she was handed down to other guys that were married that didn't want her except sexual favors. So even though she wanted to be out of prostitution, and she may have fallen in love with these guys, she may have wanted a life with these guys. They didn't want a life with her.
Right.
So they looked at her as an item.
Yeah.
So they could care less if she just left. They just, she was just a hole in their needs. So, like, even to this day, you have a lot of Asian men that don't show too much love for their wife. They just do the typical, okay, we're gonna have sex to have a baby. And so a lot of them actually take on mistresses, like somebody that they can have fun with, but not really call a wife, because if they bring them out to meet with their like coworkers or family, they would be looked down on. So they just need somebody like in secret. So that's basically what she was. And even though she wanted to be out of it, she was still in it, because these guys, they weren't really paying for her sexual favors, but they didn't want a relationship with her anyways.
Mm-mm-mm.
So she was giving it up in hopes that one of them would like love her and end up marrying her. But in reality, she knew that that wasn't going to happen.
The lives we live, the way things are set up. I don't. It's sad that she went through what she went through, but it's just fucked up that she had to take a life. And this situation was really fucked up, in my opinion, because you know everything that she's doing is stuff that everybody frowns upon, but for her it was so common. It was such a part of her life that she didn't really see anything wrong with it, and she just settled for a life of being objectified and
Right.
used as a sex toy, and it drove her to crave that sexual attention and crave that feeling, because at that moment sex is the only way she's getting any kind of tenderness, any kind of hugs or kisses. So I feel like she's using the oversexed job that she has as a way of connecting, and she's latching on to these men that don't really care about her. I mean,
Right.
but as far as actually just killing him, full fledged killing him, that's just some dimension. That's demented, man.
So we're going based on, because nobody had seen them except for the clerk that worked at the hotel. Um, so anything that she says that he said, we don't actually know if he was that type of person to say those things. All we just know was that he was a womanizer.
So
So
it's
we don't know if he actually said those words to him, or if she had this plan to strangle him. I mean, she bought a knife, for goodness sake. And I don't care who you are. I don't care if you are into role playing, but if you get a knife pulled out on you, like, you wouldn't be happy about that later on.
no,
Even if, they tell you, "Oh, it's for role play." Like, she bought a real knife, not a fake play knife. She bought a real sharp knife. So I feel like she already knew what she was going to do.
right.
And I think in her head, because her head is so filled with the fact that she wants to be loved by this man, and she knows, but in reality, she knows that she can't. I think that just drove her crazy. And so she just wanted to depict a picture of Ishida loving her and, wanting to die.
Some if
She really wanted to.
mm-mm-mm.
But we don't know what happened in that room.
We just have the hearsay from it.
Yeah, and it's all from her.
Yeah.
So we don't know. So, you guys, that is the story of Sade Abe. It's SadaAbe if you guys want to um, look her up. And Excuse me. So remember, you guys, Thursday we have Amber coming on for her unsolved mystery or unsolved cases, cold cases, missing persons, something, haunted story, maybe.
The
I'm
secret.
trying to get it. I'm trying to get it out of her for you guys, but she's not caving.
No.
So, so it's another surprise. So you guys can take a wild guess of what it is coming up on Thursday night, and then Sunday. I promise you guys, Sunday we will be back on. We have lots to talk about for the past 2 weeks, and there's more stories on the news um, of missing people, murder cases, that are completely fresh that I actually want to talk about as well. So you guys stay tuned for that, and we will see you guys back here on Thursday. Oh, and don't forget to like, subscribe, favorite our or follow our Facebook, Twitter, YouTube,
Instagram.
Anchor, and yeah, Instagram, all those. I will link the description or link the description. Wow, link
Below.
the names in the description. So you guys look out for those, and we are slowly increasing in followers on Facebook. So you guys just keep on sharing, keep on liking everything, and we will link down our email as well. You guys can email us any cases you guys want us to look into. Definitely email us. And we will see you guys Thursday night.
All right, Double A signing out.